4 years ago, I stood on this stage to deliver a rant at Soapbox Idol. By the way, that's a long tradition. I don't know when it began. Maybe Jason Sorens knows when it began, but it's been a tradition at PorcFest as long as I can remember. The opportunity for folks to stand on the soapbox, deliver a rant. By the way, we're doing Soapbox Idol tonight. I'm the host. We still have a few open slots. See me later. Love to hear your best rant. Some of the great rants over the years have been, I fondly remember a rant about how the mafia is better than the government. I remember last year fondly the winning rant about how the TSA sucks. And they make you swap out your water to give you this water that turns the frogs gay or something. It was a clever turn of phrase. Anyway, but 4 years ago, I was up on this stage to deliver a rant. I almost won. Tall Bill beat me in a tie. I don't hold a grudge. At least that's what I say out loud. But my rant was against libertarian pessimism. And I want to talk a little bit about that this morning. I don't know if you've noticed, but as libertarians, I think we are naturally pessimistic. It's like our natural state. And who can really blame us? We are the inheritors of many great intellectual traditions, most notable for producing Cassandra-like thinkers who developed the vision to see the oncoming great collisions in society, but never seem to have the power to do anything to avert them. Talk about being like the worst torture. Blowback, inflation, all the economic disasters we can predict time and again. We never know exactly the time or the place, but through studying kind of the principles of a lot of these various schools of thought, these schools of thought that have converged into what we consider to be maybe the Ron Paul brand of libertarianism today, we can often see it coming, and it's hard when others can't or refuse to do so. But this is not unique to the libertarian movement in America. This is not even unique to the libertarian movement in the 21st century or the 20th century. For an illustration, I think there's a fascinating story about the life of Eugene von Bombavrik. I don't know if folks are familiar. Maybe you've heard that name before. He was one of the great 19th century thinkers of the Austrian School of Economics. And he had a royal student, at least according to Mark Spitznagel in his book, The Tao of Capital. During his time, he had risen pretty high in government. He was the finance minister to the Austro-Hungarian Empire, and he also served as a tutor to the Crown Prince Rudolf, teaching him the theories of human action, time preference, and economic cycles. A lot of things I learn about today whenever I tune into the Bob Murphy Show. As the young prince applied these ideas to understand and process the trajectory that the empire was on, in much the ways that perhaps today we can project and see the trajectory that our empire is on, he became a reformer, convinced that of long-term doom without a change of course, as malinvestment generated by preference for short-term political gain and military expansion hollowed out the economy with heavy borrowing, subsidies, and protectionist policies. Clashing with the empire's rigid, immovable, conservative court, Prince Rudolf allegedly developed an increasing sense of futility, disillusionment, and pessimism, leading and contributing to his suicide in 1889, which in fact did trigger a domino-like chain of events that actually and ironically did bring about the end of the Austro-Hungarian Empire and ignited World War I with the assassination of his replacement successor, a name we might know from history, Archduke Franz Ferdinand, resulting in the deaths of 22 million people and a totally new world order. So to rephrase this in modern jargon, Prince Rudolph swallowed the black pill. He swallowed it pretty bad. The economic insights of the Austrian school produced in him an understandable urgency to see direct and immediate change over the large societal forces that, in retrospect and in all practicality, he just could not control, even as the crown prince. I think maybe he could have benefited from a little Stoic wisdom to focus on what he could control instead of drowning in what he could not control. Now, to fast forward 126 years, it's how long, it's at least how long the School of Austrian Thought has been, it's experienced a modern resurgence, but the Austrian School of Economics has a long, long history. We're fasting forward 126 years to today. Of course, we also find ourselves in a flailing, late-stage empire. Understanding the principles of human action and motivation, we can deduce a lot of catastrophes that are coming as our national government spirals out of control with debt, inflation, protectionism, military expansionism, and the growing domestic surveillance state. I don't have to say it. None of these are good things. None of these things that give me optimism. Yet, over the last half century, if we could mark it from, let's say, the founding of the National Libertarian Party, no matter how much we've warned the general public, no matter how much we've chided the national politicians, we've managed to get a few good people in there to tweak the nose of the machine, to be their own Cassandra politicians warning about what's going to happen if we pass these multi-trillion-dollar spending packages without even a vote of Congress, or what's going to happen if we start a regime change war in Iraq, or what's going to happen if we ignore the mass currency debasement taking place at the Federal Reserve. We've gotten a few good people in there who can give the warnings, but the hard thing is getting people to listen to those warnings and take them seriously. Certainly it has contributed to a lot of people waking up and realizing there's something wrong here. But what can we practically do with that? If all we are armed with is the knowledge of impending doom, maybe it would be better to live in the Matrix. Just have it surprise us one day. Go on not worrying about it. Our national government and its parasitic special interest class remain unreformable, unmovable, unconstitutional, and nothing we do in this half-century fight of direct political action on the national level seems to have pulled it back at all. In fact, it seems to keep getting worse. No matter who gets elected, as the great Tom Woods often says, seems like no matter who you vote for, you always end up with John McCain. And this past week, I've certainly felt that a lot. For 54 years, libertarians have been banging our heads against the immovable walls of the fortified citadel of corruption in Washington with almost nothing to show for it. And yet, to this day, I meet libertarians who insist that this is the only way. Some insist that the next time we bang our heads against the wall, that will be the time the wall finally breaks. Could be they're right, but the last half century of experience suggests to me that there's some reasonable doubt in that. Others seem to find, and I think this is the most perverse, a sense of moral superiority, banging their heads against the wall. They may know it will never produce change, but that is not their purpose. Instead, the head banging is a performative act to signal their own virtue. I am morally superior to you. Look how many times I've banged my head against the wall. Why, you don't seem to be banging your head against the wall at all. I was at the LP National Convention this past year, I'll tell you. I met some of that. I met a lot of good people too, though. I'll be fair. For those not thick-headed enough to persist On either of these bases, however, the obvious end result is pessimism. When you center your life's mission around changing the things that you cannot change, which you cannot find the power to change, something that is so big and so out of control and so unmovable, and this is your life's mission, to move a mountain that cannot be moved, that's going to lead to pessimism. People are going to burn out. People are going to say, why keep trying? Why am I doing this? Or they'll stick in the headbanging crowd and keep persisting to no avail. I'll admit I've done my fair share of headbanging over the years. I ran for the U.S. Senate at one point. It was an interesting experience. 2 years later, I ran for the U.S. Congress. I thought, this is where the rot is. This is where the corruption is. We got to get good people in the belly of the beast. And I saw people who were heroes of mine, like Ron Paul, what he did over 30 years in Congress, Rand Paul, Thomas Massey, the late but still living Justin Amash, who I still respect, even if, and would love to see him doing something again one of these days. But I also learned what it meant and what it means for our national political adversaries to have access to a money printer. I mean, they can literally, when you're running in a race, these big federal races that require millions and millions and millions of dollars to compete, there's only so much you can do with grassroots fundraising when your adversaries literally can print trillions of dollars out of thin air, appropriate it to all their special interest friends, and then have it cycle back to their PACs and political parties and their campaigns through this giant money printing, money laundering operation. As liberty candidates, we are at a real disadvantage when it comes to these federal races. And if that's all I had tried to do, I'd probably be burnt out and pretty pessimistic. And I still here at PorcFest, I'll have people who come up to me, ask me about my experiences there, and they tell me, I'm thinking about running for federal office. I'm thinking about running for the United States Senate. I'm thinking about running for the U.S. Congress. And teach their own. I don't want to tell people what to do. They have to learn those lessons the hard way like I did. Go for it. But what I will say is, unless every single elected official that represents you, from the local level to the state level, is great and wonderful, then you need to start there first. I've seen a lot of good activists, a lot of good liberty people. The first thing they do is they want to run for U.S. Senate. And these people would have been fantastic state representatives, fantastic state senators, fantastic local selectmen, local city councilors. But where are they now? They burnt out, they left, they walked away angry, they walked away pessimistic that anything could ever change, because they focused first on the thing that was so big they could not control, rather than taking the smaller opportunities that are available to make practical, real change in the here and now. So thankfully, I have had some experience of making actual change in the areas I could affect. I did run and win 3 terms in the Maine State Senate. I was able to use grassroots mobilization strategies to make pro-liberty reforms in more than a few policy areas. In politics, I've seen how and where we can win, where we can make change, but sadly for the Pine Tree state of Maine, a state that I love with people that I still very much love and care for and wish nothing but the best for, and I wish every day for the restoration of their freedoms and liberties, there just was not enough of us. There was not enough of us to change the trajectory of the entire state, which is a real shame. I think that something is particularly wonderful about the New England libertarian tradition. I think so. There's something about the way it's rooted in the history of the spirit of 1776. And I find that 1776 libertarian spirit, I find it in many people in Maine. I'm sure there's many libertarians in Vermont who have that spirit. Many in Massachusetts who have that spirit. But the challenge is that in New England, there's also a parallel ideology, which the great Andrew Heaton, I think, has argued persuasively is, in some perverse ways, directed descendantly from the Puritanism of New England, though in a supposedly more secular nature, and it's kind of this woke progressivism embodied by people like Elizabeth Warren. And the sad thing is that progressive statism philosophy, that tyrannical, Puritan, progressive philosophy, has overtaken and crushed the 1776 spirit as a governing philosophy in Maine, in Vermont, in Massachusetts, and pick your New England state. Pick your state in the Northeast. You'll find that's the governing philosophy there, stealing people's money, crushing their liberties, reducing their ability to pursue their own happiness, as our Declaration of Independence promised we were supposed to be free to do. There's something unique, however, about New Hampshire. That spirit of 1776 is still here, like all states in New England. You can find it, but only here is it a governing philosophy. Can you find it running the majority party of the New Hampshire House of Representatives? And increasingly resurgent in even the New Hampshire State Senate, which has been always a tough nut to crack. The Free State Project has helped to tip the scale in that direction. I think that sometimes we don't give enough credit in the Free State movement to all the native libertarians who are already here. I think we should remember that New Hampshire was selected as the destination for the Free State movement for a number of factors, and one of those factors was the strong libertarian culture and ethic that was already here, which was exemplified by the fact that there was a fairly libertarian governor at the time who specifically invited the Free State Project to come to New Hampshire. More libertarians come into our state to beat back the tides of this Massachusetts woke progressivism. A lot of people thought that sounded pretty great. And I meet a lot of people, a lot of native libertarians, all the time who say, we're so glad that you're here to be the reinforcements to stop them from massing up New Hampshire. The folks of the Free State movement, those who have moved here in concentrated numbers, have relocated by the thousands, libertarians to this state, committed to exercising, according to our statement of intent, to exert the fullest practical effort towards the creation of a society in which the maximum role of civil government is the protection of individuals' life, liberty, and property. You have to be at least as radical as John Locke and Thomas Jefferson. And, you can go all the way to Murray Rothbard if you want, or further. But, at very least, every participant in the Free State movement in good standing is someone who is committed to no more government than that. Government that protects our liberties, not tramples our liberties. Government that protects our property, not stealing our property. Government that protects our life, not stealing our children and sending them off to die in undeclared foreign wars. Since 2010, when Free Staters and Native Libertarians began winning election in significant numbers to the State House, New Hampshire has led the nation on gun rights, tax abolition, education freedom, right to try, occupational licensing reciprocity, election integrity, nano breweries, civil asset forfeiture abolition, sound money, cryptocurrency, homesteading, privacy rights, and numerously more areas to expand the spheres of individual freedom and responsibility to pursue your own happiness. That's why New Hampshire is consistently being ranked the #1 for freedom in the country and in North America. And that's not to say that the work is complete. There's a lot more liberty to win and a lot more liberty to restore. But, right, what's the old saying? Like, you don't have to be faster than the bear, you just have to be faster than the slowest person running from the bear. It's a lot of slow states behind us, some inching towards liberty in ways that are encouraging and a lot running right towards the bear. for some reason. And they say libertarians have bear problems. And it's not just the liberties that we can win and restore as far as state-level policies in terms of defeating state-level tyrannies. Of course, we want to fight the federal tyrannies as well. And I want to do all that I can to dispel the illusion that the only way to do that is to run people for Congress, run people for the U.S. Senate. It is great when we get people there, don't get me wrong. And I certainly hope that in the long run, the free state of New Hampshire will produce the Bernie Sanders of libertarianism. Just as Vermont has become in Vermont, Bernie Sanders has become the mascot for socialism, largely due to what was kind of a socialist state project that took place in the 60s and 70s, where socialists relocated to Vermont and transformed that state from a rock-ribbed Republican state to one of the most socialist states in the country, where they can do policy experiments with socialism and export them around the country. It's kind of crazy to think about that they did that decades before the Free State Project was a thing, and it worked. The difference, of course, is, right, we're here to restore what New Hampshire has always been about. We are the live free or die state, after all. We are the state that sparked the American Revolution and the Pine Tree riots. We are the state, we're in our state constitution, we are the only state with the right to revolution, to overthrow governments that no longer represent the people and protect our liberties. We're not transforming New Hampshire, we're restoring New Hampshire, and I think that's very important for us to communicate. But to contest the national tyrannies, New Hampshire is also flexing the 10th Amendment power to nullify unconstitutional federal laws and leading the way on this. From gun control to National Guard deployment to undeclared wars, in the end, I believe the nullification strategy, undermining the support beams of the imperial system from the state level, and let's be clear, the Constitution is still designed around a federal structure. Even if the federal government doesn't act that way anymore, they are dependent on the tacit consent of the states. And it's important to recognize, we may not have the power and the ability to change Washington, D.C. from the inside, but we can certainly erode the power structure from underneath by pulling out those support beams, by saying, we are not going to allow your gun control laws to be enforced within our borders. We are going to fight back when you tax us for unconstitutional purposes. We are going to fight back when you try to take our sons and daughters and spend them off in the wars that Congress will not declare. And so many other ways we can fight back using the power of our state sovereignty and the 10th Amendment to push back against this uncontrollable empire. I believe in the end, in the long run, perhaps over the course of the next decade, this nullification strategy will, in part thanks to New Hampshire, will demonstrate itself as undeniably more effective than the direct headbanging strategy that so many libertarians have been engaged in for the last half century. Not only has the politics of New Hampshire been transformed and restored, but the culture has moved further towards liberty as free state communities have proliferated across the state with clubhouses, potlucks, rucking groups, crypto meetups, homeschooling and homesteading networks, and various hobbyist groups. As the free state libertarians on the direct and indirect political paths cut down statist institutions, those on community building paths are building parallel institutions based on voluntarism to stand in their place and fulfill the needs that the state once claimed only their monopolies could serve. That's why 19 months ago I decided it was undeniable, and I started to feel like I was banging my head in the state of Maine. And I announced I was leaving the Maine Senate to join the Free State Project here in New Hampshire, because it seemed to me to be, and I still believe this to be true, the most practical and revolutionary service I could perform to help restore liberty in our lifetime. For 10 years, I've watched the liberty grow across the border, while only the state seemed to grow more powerful in Maine, with a few pockets of liberty victories here and there. And for the Free State Project, our mission is liberty in our lifetime. So to those who are here as active participants in the Free State movement, who've either made the move or native libertarians who share the vision of the Free State that we're building, thank you for being a part of it. I would love to have you help further in other ways, either as a patron of the Free State Project, chipping in some time to help us with our year-round efforts to bring more people in, or as a volunteer helping us to promote, outreach, invite, welcome, and engage folks from the libertarian diaspora, the 3 million libertarians out there. Many of you don't even know yet that the Free State Project exists, or they've heard about it at one point, but they think it's something that died out 10 years ago. I hear that for some reason. I don't know how much louder we can shout about the progress that's going on here, but we'll keep shouting even louder. We've got to promote to those folks. We've got to outreach to them. We've got to invite them to come to events like PorcFest and Liberty Forum. In fact, I want to do a lot more anchor events next year that are opportunities for people to come and visit the Free State and experience the communities here. We have to help them make their move and welcome them when they arrive, and we have to help them engage and participate in the community that we're all building. Because it's not just enough to come and passively be a libertarian. We don't want complainers, we want builders. We don't want people who are going to sit passively by and wait for other people to do the work. We want people who are ready to roll up their sleeves and say, I'm here to be a pioneer. I'm here to help build the Free State. And I will say, I do see oftentimes online, there are individuals who say, oh, you say New Hampshire's the Free State. Well, what about this little piece of tyranny that hasn't been slain yet? I'm not going to move until you take care of that. You're telling me that you're going to wait for other people to do the work for you? We're a movement that's built on people who came here ready to roll up their sleeves and do the hard work and build something together. A free state for libertarians, a libertarian homeland, a laboratory of democracy, where we can take all the ideas that exist in the mind of Murray Rothbard and Milton Friedman and many of the great libertarian theoreticians that only existed in the realm of ideas for so many decades. Here in New Hampshire, we're leading on putting a lot of those ideas into effect. There's been a decades-long war for education freedom and school choice, building on the ideas of Milton Friedman. Just this past month, universal school choice was passed and signed into law, a death blow to the monopoly school system. No longer will the government schools have the monopoly on your kid's mind. All parents will be empowered to take a chunk of their taxpayer money back and use it to educate their kids as they see fit, whether it's through private schools or homeschooling or maybe even just a different public school. Whatever options are right for their kid. Now in New Hampshire, we are creating an actual marketplace for education where one did not exist before. And it's not only is it a pretty radical idea, it's a common sense idea. And we're going to be seeing the fruits of that experiment in the years to come. Thank you to all who have been a part of that decade-long struggle. Our mission is liberty in our lifetime. I invite you to help us build it as a patron, as a volunteer. Maybe even if you live in Rhode Island and you can't make the move, you can be a patron of the Free State Project. You can help support what we're doing. Get a nice little, I don't have it on me, porcupine patron lapel pin we give to thank folks for helping with this. Or you can spread the word. You can tell people, I just came back from PorcFest. And it's amazing to see what's being built in New Hampshire. It's amazing the libertarian community that exists, the wins that are happening, and invite them to come to PorcFest next year or any of the many events that are going on in New Hampshire all year round. All of this has happened in New Hampshire. To any libertarian still living in pessimism, I think you've been out in the wilderness a little bit too long, and I've been there. I think it's time to spend some more time seeing what's being built here and to cure that pessimism and to become a libertarian optimist again. I think that this movement, the Free State movement, should give all libertarians optimism about what's possible with an effective strategy to concentrate our numbers, to build local community, to challenge the state. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Those are my remarks. We have 25 minutes. I would love to have a conversation with anyone here. Questions, please come up to the microphone. Feel free to ask me anything. We can talk about the Free State Project. You can ask me about my past political experiences. Whatever you like. Hey, how you doing? Man I keep seeing everywhere, like on the Tom Woods cruise, and is also joining me at Ron Paul's 90th birthday in Texas in August. Good to see you.
You too. Your list of things where New Hampshire is moving the needle, leading the nation, that was inspiring because there are some things there people may not know about or think about when we think about, oh, another libertarian candidate lost an election. But one other thing I wanted to say, your analogy about running from the bear and some people are running toward the bear, I don't know if you're a college athletics enthusiast or not, but the University of California, their mascot is the Bruin, a bear. What a coincidence.
Good point. Good point. We should write a book called A Maine Progressive Walks into a Bear. And it's the California bear flag as they adopt all their crazy policies.
Yeah.
My condolences to Noka, who is a refugee from California. We're so glad you escaped the 49th worst state for freedom in America. By the way, does anyone know what the 50th worst free state for freedom is? No, not Washington, not Illinois.
Hawaii?
What's that? No, not Hawaii, not Oregon.
Vermont?
Ding, ding, ding. It's the Empire State, very appropriately named. We're the Free State, they're the Empire State. We're number 1, they're number 50. They're pretty bad. I mean, we'll see when the next Freedom in the 50 States Index comes out if others have managed to do worse than them.
Thanks for all that you do.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
I appreciate it. And by the way, that list, I was up early this morning. I was looking at libertywins.org, where someone, I'm sure multiple people have been cataloging all the liberty wins in New Hampshire over the many years. I was personally like reading through it, and I was like, one of the wins was like, Senator Eric Brakey announced he's leaving Maine and moving to New Hampshire. I was like, well, that's cool. They thought that was a win. That's kind of cool. I think the practical freedoms are even better. But Representative Granger.
Thank you, Senator. I have a question about CD2 in Maine. Do they want to join us in New Hampshire?
There are rumors. Some rumors that I've started going. This is an idea, and maybe it's a crazy radical idea. Maybe it's something that is politically very logistically challenging. But I take inspiration from what I see going on in several other states. You have, we're just at the New Hampshire Liberty Forum this year. We welcomed to New Hampshire the executive director of a movement called the Greater Idaho Movement. And this is folks in eastern Oregon who have their own Portland problem. And they are being dominated by Portland, Oregon progressivism in their state legislature, and they have had their gun rights stripped away, they're having their freedom stripped away, they're having their paychecks stripped away. And county by county, they have voted to break away and join Idaho. And the Idaho state legislature has voted to say, yes, we would love to have you. The obstacle is that you need the state government of Oregon to consent to it, and they don't want to release their hostages. So it's a bit of a hostage negotiation situation. At Liberty Forum, there was a dialogue about how could this how could you resolve this? I think maybe the best idea that people came up with is, have you tried being even more obnoxious? Maybe to the point where they just say, go, leave, we don't want to be associated with you anymore. Maybe LPNH could give them some notes. But it's interesting, right? And that conversation is not just happening in Eastern Oregon, that is also happening in Southern Illinois. They're trying to break away and join Idaho. And I will say, coming from Maine, there is a similar split between Northern Maine and Southern Maine. And the 2nd District of Maine, which includes Oxford County, which is on the New Hampshire border, the 2nd District of Maine has been increasingly disenfranchised over the last 6 years by the ruling Democrat leftist majorities that control the House, the Senate, and the executive branch, as they have instituted voting laws. Like, I know libertarians can have different thoughts on things like ranked choice voting, but here's the simple fact. I'm not even like the biggest fan of some of the policies that this Republican congressman supported, but the 2nd District of Maine had a Republican congressman. His name was Bruce Poliquin. And the 1st District of Maine pushed through something the 2nd District of Maine rejected on ranked choice voting for electing congressmen, and there's only one race that has ever changed the outcome in Maine. The 2nd District, which rejected this policy, had their congressman removed by this policy and replaced by a Democrat. So people feel very upset about that. On top of that, the 2nd District of Maine has voted for Donald Trump now 3 election cycles in a row. And Maine has does something unique in terms of splitting its electoral college votes by congressional district, which was all well and good. Nobody objected until they started voting for Donald Trump. And then all of a sudden, the Democrats want to, and have passed, putting Maine into the National Popular Vote Compact, where it doesn't matter how the Maine people vote. If the people of New York City and Los Angeles and Chicago and the population centers all vote and put in a vote for a particular candidate, then even if the people of Maine vote for the different candidate, their electoral college votes would go to the person they didn't vote for. Crazy, right? I think it's pretty crazy, but it was clearly people trying to disenfranchise the 2nd District that kept voting for someone they found obnoxious and intolerable. And then on top of that, you even had the Democrat Secretary of State, Shenna Bellows, who is now running for governor, who was one of the folks who tried to take away their choice completely and remove Donald Trump from the ballot. And look, I'm a big critic of Donald Trump. I did vote for him in this election. I've been very critical of him, very disappointed with him in recent weeks, especially with what's happening with Iran. I pull no punches in my criticisms of our current president. But gosh darn it, like, the people should have the freedom to vote for who they want to vote for. And that should not be taken away by the progressives who run the state from the 1st District. And so there are a lot of real wedges that are dividing these 2 regions of Maine. And the people of the 2nd District of Maine are as freedom-loving, as Constitution-loving, who have that 1776 spirit in them, as much as, in large swaths, as much as so many of the people who I know here in New Hampshire. And I don't see a path for them to turn things around except for maybe to petition to break away and join New Hampshire. And so I keep suggesting it. We'll see what happens. Thank you for the question. It'd be a great alliance, and it would also be great reinforcements to make sure that they never mess up New Hampshire. So thanks for the question. I know you've been at the microphone for a bit.
Hello.
Hello.
My name is Leah. I'm actually moving to Maine. This is on the way there because that's where my family is.
Understood. It is a beautiful state, except for the government.
Right. My mom lives in a small town called Monroe, less than 1,000 people, and it's run by, I guess, a committee. There's no mayor.
It's like a select board? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So she has gotten involved in it, I guess, just paying attention. And just the other day, just the other day we stopped a meeting. They wanted to vote on something. At the 11th hour, they sent out the agenda or it's a warrant. I actually don't know what that is. You probably know better. But I just know that they sent it at the 11th hour on Monday. They were closed Tuesday, and they wanted to vote on it Wednesday. And so my mom just calls me very panicked. This is how it usually goes. And then I tell her, you just need to write them a letter, give the law. It wasn't due process. So anyways, long story short, we stopped the meeting. So we felt very empowered. That was like yesterday. Yeah, the day before yesterday. We felt pretty empowered about that. So I know you mentioned how we can't really stop what's going on in Washington, maybe directly, but indirectly using the 10th Amendment. What do you think about us in our tiny town controlling that government, maybe controlling the state? Like, could we do that?
Yeah. I mean, I certainly think it's if that's where you are and you're anchored where you are, then absolutely, like, focus on your local government and then from there focus on your state representatives and your state senators in these more local offices. I will say that the challenge and the difference is that a state is sovereign and a municipality is basically a subdivision of the state. And so a municipality will have, I think, harder challenges trying to, like, nullify the terrible things coming from a state government than a state can do to nullify the federal government. But there are still ways to fight back. I mean, certainly I know municipalities that have, like, gone after, like, trying to declare themselves like Second Amendment sanctuary cities, right? Your Second Amendment rights are safe here. We won't let the federal government, commandeer our resources and things like that. So I definitely think that if that's where you are, then definitely, like, local government, as Thomas Jefferson said, is the only place that democracy really works, where the individual has the greatest say of share possible in the decisions that are made. So I do. It's encouraging to hear that your mom is active, involved, and I certainly hope that wherever we are, we'll be active, involved in our local governments.
One more question. This town is so small, it still doesn't have a charter. Does that make it a municipality, and how would I, like, research that?
Yeah, so you're saying it's like an unorganized territory?
Well, now I'm not sure. I just know it has no charter.
Because I know there are a few unorganized territories. There's a play even called about it. What's that?
By
my
default?
mom ran for the Charter Commission in New Gloucester, Maine, so she knows a little bit about this. So yeah, I guess, yeah, if there's no charter, then it defaults to, I guess, the state standard.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Eric.
Hello.
My name's Ryan.
Hi, Ryan.
Hi. My question, you talked a little bit about this in your talk, but my question is about sustaining motivation and interest. And I guess to give you a little bit of background about me, I first came to PorcFest when I was 19. I'm 27 now. And, when I first started coming, I felt sort of overwhelmed with interest. It became sort of my primary focus. I was so excited. And then, as the years have gone on, I've started to get more interested in other aspects of my life. I got married, I got kids, I started a business, and it feels like liberty and the Free State Project and libertarianism have sort of been a secondary or third focus of mine for a few years, which I think is fine. I think that's probably normal and healthy.
I think it's healthy, actually.
But I feel like I wish that I was more motivated, and I wished that I was more interested. And so my question for you is, how do you sustain and increase your own personal motivation and interest in liberty, libertarianism, especially when, like you said in your talk, on the national level, it's like not really much is changing. But on the local level, maybe that's one of the things that motivates and interests you is all the change we're seeing in New Hampshire.
Well, there have been moments I've been demoralized and beaten down and thought about kind of walking away from everything and throwing my hands up in the air and saying, let other people, keep on the fight. And in some ways, I mean, I appreciate that, like, stepping back from direct electoral politics and coming to New Hampshire where, I'm working a real job now, I'm running the Free State Project. It comes with a grown-up salary and everything. That gives me the ability to both pursue this cause that I believe in, and also the ability to do the practical things that are important for life, like plan for a family and these other things. I mean, I will say just kind of, so there's that, understanding that there's different ways to do it, and it doesn't have to be the same method, the same way for your entire life. But whenever I do get discouraged, I honestly think about Ron Paul, and I think about how he stood alone in the wilderness for like 30 years in Congress, being Mr. No, Dr. No, without any real way of knowing the revolution that he was going to spark. He could have been just a footnote in history, an asterisk, this one weird guy who voted no on all the good government stuff that they were trying to do. He didn't know what landslide and the snowball effect he was going to create. So whenever I get discouraged, I ask myself, one, what is the thing I'm doing right now actually the most effective thing I could be doing? And certainly burning yourself out and running yourself into the ground is not in the long run the most effective way to do it. You need to take care of yourself, and you need to take care of your family. And those are the things that actually make liberty worth fighting for in the first place. So, yeah, I would just say, life, I encourage people to persist. I encourage people to find ways to contribute. Some people, they don't have a lot of time. Thank you. They don't have a lot of time to be an activist. But they make a lot of money, and they can donate to causes that help support the people who are doing those things, a nice division of labor. Life goes in phases. Remember what's important to you, and I would say, wherever you are in life and whatever your primary focus is, just also in the back of your mind, ask what are the ways you can support the overall progress of the liberty movement.
Great, thanks.
Thank you very much. I'm told I've got a few minutes left. Are there any final questions? Anyone? All right, we got one. Guy I met this morning with the Bucky hat.
Yes.
That's the one thing New Hampshire's missing, by the way. We need a Bucky's. That's my position, and I'm sticking to it.
That's right. Hi there, my name is Rob. I come from the People's Republic of Canada. First time
They don't even
attending-
have Bucky's up there. Where'd you get that hat?
In Texas, down in Texas, of course.
All right.
Yeah, so first of all, thank you for organizing this event. And my question was, you mentioned how it's important to organize at the local level, and I agree, but
Yeah.
as you know, New Hampshire has a full slate of democratic control at the federal level, and I was wondering, should the Free State Project dedicate more effort into changing that?
Well, first, I do want to distinguish between the Free State Project as an organization and the Free State Project as a movement, or what we call the Free State Movement.
Right.
Right. Because the Free State Project does not get directly into politics. We leave that to our friends at the New Hampshire Liberty Alliance and Americans for Prosperity and all the independent actors fighting for liberty in their own way. But if you're asking me for my advice on should we focus more on the national level, I think that inevitably we will get there, but I think that it's like first things first. First thing, you make your own bed, right? You got to put your own house in order before you try to save the world. And right now, I think the focus of most in the Free State movement has been how do we build the liberty infrastructure in our state legislature and our local things, because those are the things that we can most directly have an impact on. And it would be nice, it certainly is embarrassing, that the folks who claim to represent New Hampshire in Washington, D.C. are like the total Democrat statist, Elizabeth Warren style, kind of among the as bad as any in New England. But we joke, at least we got them out of New Hampshire. And I think the real value is, understanding that. I'm told 1 minute. All right. I think the real value is the value of Bernie Sanders to the socialist movement is he's a mascot. Right? I think it would be great for Lily Tang Williams to get elected to Congress. Maybe she will be the first. I know she's running again. Maybe there are some other candidates who might emerge this cycle. I think those are definitely projects worth supporting. if for no other reason that when people think of New Hampshire, they think of the strong, strident libertarians who are causing trouble and mischief for the statists in Washington, D.C. But in the meanwhile, we're making liberty win here in the state legislature, and I think down the road, inevitably, liberty will bubble up from this huge bench of state legislators that exists in New Hampshire to people eventually rising when they're ready into those national offices.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you very much.